Welcome to the Silver Screen Podcast. I'm Jared Boomer.
And I'm Katie Gainey West. This is a podcast about movies and pop culture.
And on this week's episode, we are reviewing the new Tom Hanks movie, A Man Called Otto, based on a book by Fredrik Backman. Katie, you and I have both read the book.
Yes.
I think we both enjoyed it, so...
Jared, it's one of the best books I've ever read. And I remember when it came out, I got it from the library, and I'm just sad because I don't have my own copy of it. So after seeing this movie, I was like, I think I need to reread it and get my own copy.
So that will be what we are talking about today on this episode of the show. First, though, we do have some news. And before we get into that, we wanted to let you know that there's going to be lots of discussion regarding suicide on this episode. So a trigger warning for that. The movie is based around that a lot. It's about Tom Hanks's character wanting to take his own life basically throughout the course of the movie. So we'll discuss that more as we go along, but just wanted to give you that heads up before we get into our review. And first, though, we do have some news. The Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret trailer is out. Rachel McAdams in this movie, based on the Judy Blume book. I have not read the book, but I know lots of people that like it. And this trailer looks good. It looks like it's going to be a fun movie and cute and talk about, the female body and how it changes and all of that great stuff.
Jared, I want us to review it just so I can hear your perspective. But Mandy, our friend of the pod, she was the one that sent me the link. So I watched the trailer immediately, but I knew it was coming out. But I've read the book several times. It's so cute. And the movie looks great. Like, to me, just based on the trailer, it looks like a great adaptation. I don't know any of the young people in it, but I love Rachel McAdams. And I think it's cool to see this made into a movie. I think that was a good choice.
Yeah, I think that. When does it come out again? It comes out.
Oh, no idea. I think
March,
it's
April.
I was going to say it's spring or summer, but I didn't
Let's
pay that
see
much
here.
attention, honestly.
Let's look up the release date real quick here. April 28th.
Okay.
So,
perfect.
yes.
Well, that'll be nice. Okay.
Kind of just starting the summer, which I think is a great place to put it.
Yes.
So, also we have the Chevalier trailer. Is that how you say
Chevalier.
Chevalier. Okay.
Chevalier.
Yes. Chevalier.
Yes, perfect. And
Thank
I only
you.
know that because I should have warned you about that. I'm sorry, because there was a famous actor and he was in a bunch of movies I watched on Turner Classic Movies growing up, and his name was Maurice Chevalier. And so I knew that name. But this composer was the one, I think I mentioned it on the podcast, but I definitely mentioned it to friends. When we went to a New Year's Eve thing on New Year's Eve in downtown Dayton, they actually talked about this movie. It was, they had like an orchestra, ballet, it was all sorts of, in the opera in Dayton, which was great. And it was Parisian themed. It was like a French theme. And it was supposed to be a trip to Paris. It was Voyage à Paris. And Chevalier, this guy talked about this famous composer and said, there's a movie coming out. And I was like, how do I not know this? And this guy is telling me this at this New Year's Eve thing. And anyway, so the trailer came out and I saw it at A Man Called Otto. And I was like, I have to mention this because this is based on a true story, Jared. And it sounds amazing. And this was a Black composer who was very famous and wrote some gorgeous music. So this is going to be about his life. And I saw that Lucy Boynton is in it and Minnie Driver, basically everybody I like. So I think it'll be great. And it has a French theme.
Yeah, that's cool too. So I think it'll be an interesting movie.
Mm-hmm.
We also have that Bradley Cooper movie coming out where he plays,
Maestro.
Mozart. So
yeah.
That'll be interesting to see too, and I think that's coming out the end of this
Wait,
year.
is he
too.
Mozart or wasn't it Sondheim or isn't it one of those? Or am I getting them confused because there's so many music biopics?
Let me see here.
Did I say
He's
it right?
Playing Leonard. Sorry, yes, you did. He's playing Leonard Bernstein.
That's what it is. Okay, Leonard Bernstein. Yep.
But that'll be out later this year.
I'm really excited for that one.
Directed by Bradley Cooper as well.
Yes. Carey Mulligan's
and produced
in
by
it.
Martin Scorsese and Steven Spielberg.
Yep.
Maya Hawke's in it. Jeremy Strong. So that'll probably be an Oscar contender
for sure
for next year's Oscars.
For sure.
Also, speaking of awards, we had the Golden Globes and the Critics' Choice Awards since the last time that we recorded. And just running down those really quick for the Golden Globe Awards, the big winners: Best Motion Picture Drama went to The Fabelmans. Best Motion Picture Musical or Comedy went to The Banshees of Inisherin. And then Austin Butler won Best Actor, and Cate Blanchett won Best Actress in dramas. And then for musical or comedies, Colin Farrell won for The Banshees of Inisherin. Michelle Yeoh won for Everything Everywhere All at Once. So that was the Golden Globes. Critics' Choice Awards winners. Best Picture was Everything Everywhere All at Once. They don't split it up based on dramas and comedies.
Right.
And then Best Actor was Brendan Fraser for The Whale.
Yep.
Best Actress Kate Blanchett for Tar.
This is not going my way already. I can tell you that. Except for Brendan. I'm so happy for him.
And the Critics' Choice 2 also does Best Acting Ensemble, and that went to the cast of Glass Onion, A Knives Out Mystery.
I saw that.
Yeah, that was an interesting choice.
And then Janelle Monáe made a speech. Oh, Jared, there was some, I don't know if this is breaking news, but I saw it today and thought I should mention this too. Just because I'm thinking of Janelle Monáe, then I was thinking her pronouns are they, them. And speaking of they, them, Ezra Miller, our dear friend. So basically they've like plead it down. So they're basically not having to do anything because the burglary charge would have held up to 25 years in jail.
Okay, so they're just like paying people off basically.
Okay. Like I do know that they have to do some, I think, community service. They did have to pay some small fines. I mean, there's some things that go with it, but it's definitely a slap on the wrist, which really bothers me. Then the other thing I saw that came out today, the news about Alec Baldwin, he's getting charged with involuntary manslaughter, which if anybody wanted to know, that means that you have killed somebody. But that it was an accident or it was involuntary. Like it was not unplanned. It was an accident. It was, there was no malintent. But anyway, super sad. I mean, I'm kind of like, well, good, I guess. But I don't even know how you'd live your life after that, really. So
yeah, I don't either, and I don't know if there's going to be a court case, like investigation. I know they've already investigated, but I don't know if Alec Baldwin's going to have to go to court for this charge. I don't know what happens now after that charge was handed down. So.
I don't know. And I'm not really like against it. People should be held accountable. A woman and a mom and a wife is dead. But I am glad that they're holding the arms person responsible as well, because I'm like, yeah, Alex shot the gun, but there was a slew of things that happened leading up to that where people didn't do their job. So it's not just Alex's
exactly
fault. Yeah.
So we'll follow that situation as it continues.
Yeah.
And we do have a correction here in Corrections Corner.
Yes.
More just like updates on things. Your twin, your brother, Sean, finally listened to the episode where we talk about Daniel Radcliffe and how you thought that he looked like Daniel Radcliffe.
He did.
And he had a response. So we wanted to, publicly read that for you here on the show.
Also, I could not for the life of me remember what episode that was. I know we somehow started talking about the movie that he was in with Sandra Bullock and Channing Tatum. And that's
Lost City.
Yeah, but I don't remember why we weren't talking about that movie. Like that wasn't the episode.
No,
but it came
we weren't
up.
reviewing that.
So I don't remember when we were talking about it. But Sean finally, I do love this. Like Sean is living his life in Spain right now, and he has been catching up on the podcast, which is so sweet. So he'll send me things, but I'll be like, Sean, when was this? Like, okay, I don't remember. Anyway, but he did say I was crazy, but he did think it was funny. He also, Jared, he said very sweet things about you. And he said, I'm very lucky to have you as a friend. But I said, did it make you laugh at least? And he said, oh, yes, I laugh at you constantly. That's a direct quote. And then lastly, the Daniel Radcliffe thing, he said that we announced People's Sexiest Man Alive. Like I was talking about Chris Evans, either in that episode or it was like an episode around when we were talking about Daniel Radcliffe. And he was like, I was really hoping that People's Sexiest Man Alive, the pick would have been Daniel Radcliffe. But he's like, but the universe didn't get the memo about the joke. But I thought that was so funny. So I wanted to share. And then the only other bit of information, I actually didn't fact check this, but I'm pretty sure she's correct about it. I probably should fact check it though. My friend Amanda, who is also a listener of the pod, so excited for her too. She's getting married this year. I cannot wait. But Amanda was listening to the episode and also loved the menu and saw the menu. They filmed it on Jekyll Island, which is the island my family, I always grew up going to on the coast of Georgia. So I thought that was amazing. I couldn't believe, actually, I can totally believe I wouldn't have recognized it because it's not like they did it in a town or something. They would have done this like on the outskirts or whatever. But Jekyll's a beautiful island. And it's not a fancy rich island like St. Simon and and Sanibel and some of the other Florida, Georgia islands. But I thought that was amazing that they filmed the menu there.
That is really cool. And looking this up, it seems like, yes, it was shot in Savannah, part of it.
Okay.
So,
yep.
Yes. So
Amazing.
very, very interesting. Did not know that. So
And
that's
Amanda
cool.
and I took her to Jekyll so she could see it, but Amanda and I lived in Savannah at the same time, and that's how we became great friends.
Nice. It looks like they used Jekyll Island and then also Tybee Island as well. Have you
Oh,
heard of
Tybee,
that?
yes.
Okay.
So Tybee, I went there many times. Tybee's like 20 minutes from Savannah, so
Okay.
it's much closer. Jekyll, it takes you about an hour and a half to get there, and Jekyll's like you have to legit go across a bridge to get on it. It is fully an island.
Also, this article says that the cast stayed at the Perry Lane Hotel in Savannah.
Oh, I don't know that one, but cool.
Okay. Good to know.
Not the one I worked at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was not a shout out for your hotel, unfortunately, but they stayed somewhere else.
They did.
There you go. That's our corrections. And now we'll move on to our recommends. I only have one recommend. HBO has a new series, The Last of Us, based on the video game. And I've played the first game. I have not played the second, but I watched the first episode. I thought it was very good. It was very true to the game. If you don't know the story, basically people are infected. In the game, it's like this spore-like thing that travels through the air, but in the TV show, it's like a fungus. People get infected with this fungus and then basically turn into just kind of like almost zombies in a way, just attacking other people. So it was good. The pilot was very good. Pedro Pascal was very good in the lead role. So I'll definitely keep watching this. But if you were wondering, is it close to the video game? I would say yes so far. And if you just want a good drama show to watch, it looks like this is going to be good. Now, granted, we only have one episode so far, but if things continue the way the first episode was, this could be a pretty solid series on HBO. So
awesome. Well, I've heard only good things. I also think HBO pretty much always puts out consistent good work. I had no idea it was a video game or anything, but I heard so many people talk about it and knew the people that were mentioning it. I was like, oh, this makes sense that this is what the material would be about. So, but I've heard great things. I have a couple things to recommend. I won't dwell on this one, but Jenny and Georgia is a show on Netflix. I watched season 1, but season 2 came out and I watched it in like a matter of days because I love the show. I will say some of the teenage stuff really bothers me. Both because it scares me to have a teenager one day, first of all, but also like, I just feel like the character of Jenny is so dramatic, like so melodramatic that I struggle with it. And also the things that happen in all of their lives would never happen in real life, but it's a very fun, cute show. I do think it's well acted. I think it's just sometimes it's a bit much, but overall it's one of my favorite shows on Netflix. So I watched that. I wanted to do a shout out for that. Then I wanted to mention Yellowstone. So everyone's talked about Yellowstone. This isn't new information, but I was maybe the last one to start it.
I wasn't the last one
because I've told people about it and now I'm like, no, you have to watch it. So I really wasn't sure, based on the family and friends and people that have told me about this, I wasn't sure I'd be the audience. That's what I'm saying. I was like, I don't know if this has political undertones. I don't know if this is geared towards a certain demographic. I'm thinking a little bit of both, yes. But I think the show is excellent. It's like HBO worthy status, but it's on Peacock. I have been watching, I think it's on something else, but I watch it on Peacock now. They have the first 4 seasons on Peacock. I'm in season 3, but let me tell you how fast I got to season 3. 4 days.
Okay.
So 4 days. I went on a brief vacation with family, and when we were there at night, I would watch just 4 or 5 hours straight with them every single night. Could not get enough. I'm absolutely obsessed. It is such a good show. And I'm not a huge Kevin Costner fan, but the cast is extraordinary. It is so drama filled. It's juicy. I love it. So please watch Yellowstone if you're like me and you had just started. And then lastly, I wanted to mention a podcast. So my friend Brandon's going to be really excited about this, but I am listening to something called Dead Eyes.
Okay.
It's a podcast, and the guy that does it is Connor Ratliff, who either his voice or who he is, you would recognize him. He's been on a bunch of shows, Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. I think he was on Veep. There's a bunch of things, but I actually waited to mention this podcast for a Tom Hanks episode. The whole premise of this podcast, there's 3 seasons, is that Connor Ratliff, back in 2000, I think, when they started to film Band of Brothers, he got cast to be a very small part in Band of Brothers. It was Officer Zelensky. It's a very small part. He was so excited, though. He's fresh out of drama school, blah, blah, blah. So then the casting agent never was like, hey, you need to come back, because Tom Hanks was directing that episode. So he was like, Tom Hanks wants to meet you. We need you to like re-audition. We need you to see you again. And apparently Tom Hanks told somebody that he had dead eyes. He said, I don't want him, and they fired him. Now, you could disagree with the term firing because Connor is convinced the term is firing. They did change their mind. All of it was in poor form. No one should have told Connor as an actor what Tom Hanks said. Like no one. And at the point I'm at in the series, I don't know that Tom Hanks actually said it. I don't know if it was hearsay, if somebody else said it and said it was Tom. I don't know. I haven't solved the mystery yet. But you would think, as I did at the beginning, I was like, how in the world am I going to spend 3 seasons of a podcast talking about whether or not Tom Hanks ever said this and blah,
this
blah, blah,
very
blah.
small thing that
This
happened.
very small,
in the filming
inconsequential.
Of this series. Yeah.
So then it's turned into a thing, though, where Connor, it's actually very clever because I was really like, I don't know about this. Connor has turned it into this really fascinating podcast about all these people he's met throughout being an actor. And John Hamm is one of the people he talks to because he went to school with John Hamm. They went to college together at the same time. They're around the same age. Like Ryan Johnson, who directed Glass Onion, he was just on the podcast. Mike Birbiglia, who's in A Man Called Otto, was just on it. It's so weird that I'm listening to this now and all these people are like coming up right now in pop culture. But it's a really good podcast. There's three seasons, like I said. And I will tell you, this is a spoiler, but a lot of people have heard this story because it came out during the pandemic. I know that the last episode, he does interview Tom Hanks and gets to talk to him. And I know another episode, because I looked ahead, I know another episode is with Colin Hanks, his son. So anyway, I'm sure it's all going to turn out, it's going to be an all's well that ends well kind of a situation. But I am intrigued to hear Tom's recollection of this whole thing. And yeah, just how that plays out. But it's a really good podcast, and it surprised me because I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about it.
Nice. So I'm that might be one I have to check out then if I add it to my list of podcasts. So
cool.
Seems interesting. So
Dead Eyes.
Okay. Well, now we'll talk about A Man Called Otto, released on January 13th of 2023. That was the wide release. I think it was in a few theaters before that, but not very many. It just got in my area and Katie's area this week. So that's why we're reviewing it now on the podcast. So it's rated PG-13 for suicide attempts, mature thematic elements, and language. It's 2 hours and 6 minutes. And IMDb is a 7.5 out of 10. Rotten Tomatoes is a little split. Critics 69%, audiences 97%. So
I know. What's that about?
Well, from what I've seen from a lot of the critics' reviews is that they're calling this a very simple movie, which I don't think is a bad thing. Which we'll talk about in likes and dislikes. But yeah.
And also, this just reminds me, because this week, everybody, for our episode next week, I'm very excited, but I told Jared there's a lot of movies I need to see that came out in 2022 that I haven't watched. So one of them was The Banshees of Inisherin. And I would argue that that is one of the most simplistic plots I've ever heard, ever. And I think that was much less complicated than this film. So I think that's a pretty weird critique, but if that's what critics are saying, fine. But this movie shocked me in the best way. We mentioned, like last week, I told Jared, I was like, I don't think I'm going to like this. The trailer looks awful. They're going to slaughter this book and I'm going to hate it. And I felt the exact opposite by the end.
So box office wise, domestically, it's made $21 million, worldwide $36 million. That's not too bad for this movie. You would hope it could get to maybe 80 or 90 million. That's probably what it has to make, I would guess. I don't know the budget on it, but I would feel like it's probably in the $40-50 million range. So if it can get there, it probably makes its budget back. And synopsis is Otto is a grump who's given up on his life following the loss of his wife and wants to end it all. When a young family moves in nearby, he meets his match in quick-witted Marisol, leading to a friendship that will turn his world around. And this movie is directed by Mark Forrester. He is a German-born filmmaker and director known for directing Monsters Ball, Finding Neverland, Stranger Than Fiction, The Kite Runner, Quantum of Solace, World War Z, and he has 6 upcoming projects, including The Cow, The Graveyard Book, Buzzed, and The Adventures of Thomas. Those are such random titles. No idea what any of those are about. So
I know, but I was shocked by all the movies he's directed, like big time movies with big time actors.
Yeah, that is kind of surprising because he's not a name that you think of Really.
I would have never known him from anybody until I saw what he directed. And I was like, wow, I've seen a lot of these films.
Done some solid projects. So
Yeah.
we'll take a quick break here on the show. We'll come back and we'll talk about the cast and our likes and dislikes for A Man Called Otto. And we're back here on the Silver Screen Podcast talking about A Man Called Otto. In the lead role is none other than Tom Hanks playing Otto Anderson.
Jared, if you could lay on the crush alert button for a while, I'd appreciate it. Thank you so much. Tom Hanks, this is a borderline Tom Hanks podcast. You know him. We love him. He has over 95 acting credits, but he is often known for Forrest Gump, Castaway, Big, Saving Private Ryan, Sleepless in Seattle, and You've Got Mail, and recently Elvis, which we covered in episode 154. Wasn't our favorite movie this year, but we had a lot to say about it. It was a fun episode. He's been nominated for 6 acting Oscars. He's won twice in back-to-back years for Philadelphia and Forrest Gump. Currently, you can hear him in Pinocchio on Netflix.
Disney Plus.
Is that right?
Disney Plus.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. But it's animated, right?
Yes, he's playing. Well, he's live action,
Geppetto.
but Pinocchio's animated. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Okay.
Yeah.
But
17 Pinocchio movies came out this year. So.
I know. I'm sorry. I got them mixed up, but I'm even watching the one on Netflix. But yes, so he's in the one on, you said Apple.
He's on Disney Plus.
Disney Plus. And there's the soundbite. So anyway, Disney Plus, and you said it's live action, but Pinocchio is animated.
Yes, Pinocchio is
That's
not
a mess.
played by a real
cannot.
person. Yeah.
I will not be watching that. So,
I've heard it sucks.
I do know he plays Geppetto, right?
He does play Geppetto. You are
so
correct.
I got one thing right. Oh, and I got the title of the movie right. Okay, great. Anyway, next up, you can see him in Asteroid City and Here. And we've mentioned Asteroid City in like the last 3 podcasts. Like everybody we know, and it has been in a recent movie, is going to be in that movie coming up. So get excited.
Yes, it seems like it's going to be a stacked cast for that one. So
yes.
I will withhold doing my Tom Hanks Elvis impression on this episode. So
thank you so much. But you know, it does make me laugh every single time.
I don't know. I could maybe I'll drop it in later. So
okay.
It's just that one line
and
that he says that is like,
I know.
This is the greatest show ever. And that's basically it. He talks in like stilted sentences through that whole movie. I don't know why.
You know what, though? Speaking of this week, the sad news about Lisa Marie Presley dying.
Yes, that was very sad. And I saw that affected.
Sad.
We forgot to mention that in news, but that was very sad.
Yeah.
And I saw that Austin Butler was pretty affected by that as well, which makes sense.
Oh, I'm sure.
He won the Golden Globe, and then 2 days later that happened. So it was.
Yep.
It was
and
a
she
lot
was
of
there.
Emotions for him. Yeah. Yep.
Yes. But always get your heart checked, people. That does run in families. So just saying. Okay. Next, please don't laugh at me. I cannot roll my R's. I can't do any of the beautiful things that Spanish speakers can do. So Mariana Trevino is the other person I wanted to highlight. She plays Marisol. She is originally from Mexico and is very famous there. She's kind of like Diego Calva that we mentioned in Babylon, very well known in Mexico. She's been nominated for 3 acting, I think it's Ariel Awards, but it's even if I'm pronouncing that wrong, I apologize, but it's the Mexican equivalent to an Oscar. So she's been nominated for 3 there. She's best known for Club de Cuervos, Polvo, Overboard, and How to Break Up with Your Douchebag. That is a real title of a movie. I laughed out loud when I typed it. She doesn't have any upcoming projects listed yet, but I thought she shared the screen with Tom Hanks. I thought she did a fantastic job. I love her. And I've watched a ton of interviews with Tom recently about this movie, and he very much respects her and spoke very highly of her. And then this movie has an amazing supporting cast. A lot of these people, it's kind of one of those movies where even if you might not recognize their name, you'd recognize their face and vice versa. The supporting cast includes Mack Bayda, Cameron Britton, Peter Lawson-Jones, Juanita Jennings, Manuel Garcia Rulfo, Cristiana Montoya, Alessandra Perez, Truman Hanks, Mike Birbiglia, and Rachel Keller.
We should mention that Truman Hanks is Tom Hanks' son.
He is.
And this is his first movie that he's ever been in. So
yes, he does things behind the camera, but they wanted someone that looked like Tom, and Tom says that he looks exactly like him when he was that age, and I was like, really, Tom?
Like, we have movies of you when you were like just a little bit older than that age. Yeah.
Never looked like that, but okay. Sure. Yeah. And then I know, Jared, I know I already put this in the notes, but I cannot wait to mention my little Chet Hanks blurb when we get to it.
Oh boy. So we will talk about Chet Hanks on the way. So
Truman is Chet's brother.
yes. So let's talk about our likes in this movie. This does have a few differences from the book, but we'll kind of just weave those in as we go. They aren't. I would say they're not major differences. They are just small things that they changed, whether that be characters' names or combining some characters for the sake of not having as many characters. But the overall storyline remains the same as the book, and that kind of leads me into my first like, and the fact that they did not change the book a ton for this movie. If you were to read the book after you saw this movie, it would match up pretty much almost exactly with the movie. Now, they do change the
Yes.
order of some of the events and things, but other than that, it's very accurate to the book, and I was impressed that it was so accurate to the book.
Me too, Jared. That's one of my top favorite things, most complimentary things I can say about the film as well. And one thing we forgot, or I wanted to mention, I didn't know that Tom Hanks in his interviews, he kept saying it was Uva.
Okay.
And so it's not Ove. Like I had always thought it was A Man Called Ove, but it's apparently A Man Called Uva.
Okay.
But doesn't matter. The point is, I bring that up though because I was interested, since this was a Swedish book, I was interested how they were going to change things, and I understand their justification and why they change things. Otto is a name we wouldn't normally recognize, but it's much more understandable to an American than Uva. Or people would go like we just did, like, how do you even pronounce that? And I think that most of the choices they made in the film, it's understandable why they did that. So some of the main things that I caught or looked up, I did look at an article on looper.com by Rita Dorch, but it was explaining that like the main car in the book was a Saab instead of a Chevy. So that's funny. The neighbors are Iranian, not Mexican. I don't think there's any rhyme or reason to that, except I do think we would have a lot more Mexican neighbors probably in America.
Mm-hmm.
And then now the one thing I didn't catch that I thought might be helpful for people to know, Malcolm, the character of Malcolm, I remembered somebody like that in the book, but I read it a couple years ago. But it's a mixture of two of the characters. So it's Adrian, who's the bike delivery kid in the book, Uva book. And then Mirsad is Adrian's gay boss who works at the coffee shop. But Mirsad actually gets thrown out of his house because his father's homophobic. Then, like, the name Ruben was the neighbor in the movie. In the book, he's called Rune.
Mm-hmm.
And then Lena, okay, this was another thing I wondered about. I couldn't remember. So Lena is the name of the reporter who writes about Otto or Uva saving someone's life on the train tracks. But she, in the book, I don't think she's portrayed as like a social media journalist. I think she's just a journalist, which I will say that was a cutesy. I could have done without that.
Yeah.
Like I would have been okay if she was just a journalist, but I do get, and it did make me laugh because that is what so many people do now in emergencies is they'll hold up their phone and take videos. And I'm like, we need to call 911. Like we need to get some paramedics here.
Exactly. So, and that
Yeah.
does come into play a little bit towards the end with like the final, like Mike Birbiglia's character kind of, he gets caught basically at the end of the movie.
Yes.
So then the fact that she's a social media journalist allows her to just like put it on, Facebook, Instagram, whatever, instead of having to write a story. So, okay. So more likes for this movie. This is a very emotional movie. And I think what I wanted to say too about this is that it's not trying to do too much. Like we've talked about some movies on here recently that have had way too many storylines and have done a lot of crazy things. And this movie does not. It just sticks true to the book. The book is emotional. The movie is emotional. I thought it was very well done. I thought they didn't overreach at all, and they just knew what they wanted to do when they started making this movie, and I think that comes across. And the emotional aspects of it do really hit. I think that Tom Hanks gives a good performance in this. Probably not like the best performance he's ever given in his career, but it's better than some of his recent movies that we've reviewed on the show. And I think that he really captures those emotional subtleties pretty well.
Yes, and it is nice to see Tom Hanks in a role where he's grumpy, where he's not like everybody's favorite guy and just the sweet romantic lead. Like that is played. We've done that. We've seen it, and he's good at it. But it's nice to see him play something different. And I agree with you, Jared. Like they didn't try to overplay anything in this. And this was so closely aligned with the book that if you don't like the movie, I wouldn't blame Fredrik Backman, but it is so much like the book that I don't think you'd like the book. But I've noticed as I've gotten older, it's harder to make me cry in the theater, like at a movie. I cried independently, started and stopped 4 times in this movie. I could not, I don't know what happened. It was everything. I don't know if it's because like just life situations have changed, like being married versus like before you're married, or I don't know, parents getting older. Just things hit me in a very different way. And I think maybe I was a good audience for this though too. Like my age group is a good one, and like older people, like our parents and stuff, this would be a great movie for them. Oh, Jared, I should have mentioned too, if anyone's wondering, I was kind of shocked by the box office because without fail, since the pandemic, hands down, this was the most crowded. I don't even know if there was a seat to sit in except the seats that we found because somebody sat where we had bought tickets, which was annoying, and they wouldn't move. And that made me uncomfortable. And I was like, I'm not going to fight you in the theater. So we sat in the front, but those were like the only seats available were the ones in the front. So it was a jam-packed house, which clearly shows Tom, no matter what he's doing, can bring people to the theater.
Yeah, there was a lot of people in my showing too, a lot of older people, but I think that's a good thing because
Yeah.
older people, there's not been a lot of movies recently that the older audience would really enjoy. And I think this is one
Yes.
that, like you said, your parents, your grandparents, they could really find a lot of joy in this movie. And I think the
Mm-hmm.
more life you've lived, it's probably more relatable to you. Like
Yeah.
some of the
Yeah.
older people in the theater are more around Otto's age. And so they have done things like been married for a very long time or had
Right.
kids or things of that nature. So I think we're talking about how it affected us emotionally. It probably affected them even more emotionally in certain ways, just based on the story. So
Well, and I was shocked by how much they liked it. I mean, how many people I could hear sniffling and crying in the theater
mhm.
with me, how many people I could hear laughing. And because I am not uncomfortable with things like a trans person or someone who's gay or anything like that, or pregnancy loss, things like that. But I expect some people to be like, "Oh, the nerve," and walk out of the theater. And I don't think anyone did that in our theater, and nobody said anything disrespectful. I didn't hear anybody scoff, and I was really surprised by that. But overall, I just found this movie, I was really shocked by how endearing it was. I expected it to be cheese or just not well done, and it was wonderful.
Another like too is that the music is really great. Thomas Newman, I think, is the composer for this
Yes.
movie. So
Who's my favorite composer?
he's done a ton of stuff.
I
And
love him.
Mike Birbiglia is also playing White Boy Summer, but
Yes.
we got to dislike that as well because Chet Hanks is not
We
a
have to
great
dislike
person.
it.
Yeah.
But do you know, it was a moment because Mike Birbiglia rolls up. I was like, I have to mention this in the podcast. He rolls up, White Boy Summer's playing. I look at Arjun and we look at each other and then we both just started laughing. We were like, no, because Chet is a regular conversation piece in this house. We always talk about like if we have a bad day, we're like, at least we're not Chet Hanks, or like, if you can say like, what do you think Chet Hanks is doing right now? Like Chet comes up a lot. So when that song was playing, I was like, is this real? And then I said, Tom is such a proud father and such a sweet man. I almost wonder if he was like, can we do this for Chet since Truman's in the movie? Like, I wonder if he brought that up because White Boy Summer is not a new song, people.
No, it's not.
Also, I hate that I'm like free advertising for someone I loathe so much. Again, this is a Tom Hanks podcast, not a Chet Hanks podcast.
Yeah, let's make
Anyway,
that very clear. So
yeah, and you guys, Chet thinks COVID isn't real. So
yeah, yep.
just think about that before you
And
listen
his
to White Boy Summer
dad
and
was
pay
one
for
of the
it,
first
okay?
people
One of the
that
first.
got COVID, and one
It
of the
was a
first big
nationwide
names.
crisis.
Yeah,
We thought we were going to lose the love of our lives. So just
we thought we were
keep that in
gonna
mind, everyone.
lose Tom Hanks 3 weeks into the pandemic. Luckily,
Yeah,
we
and
did
Rita.
not.
I mean, I love
Yeah.
Rita too, and
Yep.
Rita also produced this film. I saw
Yeah,
that too. That was
I
cool.
saw that as well. So
And I love Rita. I really do. I know I don't talk about her as much, but I respect their love and their marriage, and she's a wonderful lady.
another like for this movie is the diversity in the characters. Obviously, the big part of the book is like getting to know different cultures and
Mm-hmm.
maybe people that aren't the same as you. So we have a transgender person in this movie. We have
Yes.
obviously a Mexican person in this movie. So, things of that nature, a Mexican family. So those are some interesting things depicted on screen by Hollywood. And obviously true to the book as well, because while they did change some things, that's a big part of the book is the main character kind of realizing these things and that maybe it's not all about his own little world that he's lived in for so long.
Mm-hmm. And I think the only other I really wanted to mention was the flashbacks. I personally really liked the flashbacks. I think flashbacks in books and movies are usually not well done. They're usually crazy, they make no sense, they're not explained well, people leave context out. I thought they were perfectly placed in this film. I thought they added to the film. They weren't too long, like too lengthy. I didn't have to guess who people were because it really only was Sonia, who is Tom Hanks, that's his wife in the movie, and him, played by Truman Hanks. So those were the only two you really had to know. And then you see a couple things with Ruben, the neighbor. But for the most part, you only see the two of them. So it wasn't hard to understand, but I think they did such a great job in executing those. And I can't remember the last film we watched that I was that impressed with flashbacks.
I also wanted to one final like for me is just
Yeah.
the production design. I thought it was very similar to how I imagined it from reading the book. How all
Yes.
their houses are exactly the same. They all live on the. It's talked about in the book a lot. How there's this street and you can't drive cars on the street, and they make that a point in the movie, which I liked. So they tried to make it as I think realistic as possible to the book, which was good to
Yeah.
see because they could have definitely changed that up. But that's a huge point of the book is like he's so mad at people driving on the street, and he does
Yeah.
this routine. He does his rounds every morning, which you see in the movie as well, of him,
Yeah.
going around checking parking permits and taking out the trash and all this other stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
I liked that they kept that in the movie as well because I thought that from a design standpoint, it looked a lot like I would imagine it looked. I imagined it in my head when I was reading the book. So
Yes. And that's a good segue for me actually into a dislike. I didn't note this down, but I'm not normally someone, I don't think that's very good at noticing continuity errors, but there was one in the film that somebody in the theater said it, but I had noticed it too. When Tom Hanks, when Otto is trying to teach Marisol to drive, she's in the car and there's a stop sign and she just blows through it
I
and no
saw
one
that
says
too.
anything and he doesn't say anything. And it was so obvious that I was like, wow, that could have been an easy fix. That could have been let's take it again and start past the stop sign. So I thought that was a really large error for me where I was like, that would have been a very easy fix. But someone in the theater yelled it out. They're like, are you not going to stop?
That's funny. I like the call and response that was happening with your theater, just
It was nice.
two-way street there. So
Yeah, but that was the only big error I noticed, but I was like, oh wow, that could have been fixed.
So one of my dislikes is kind of the way that they like the whole Mike Birbiglia storyline, and I really
Yeah.
like Mike Birbiglia. I've seen him
So
in
do I.
person multiple times. Love his stand up, but I just thought that's not really an aspect that's in the book. Obviously, they're trying to take their house away, but there's not like this big gotcha moment in the book where it
Yeah.
like happens. So I thought that was kind of weird for the movie. It was also kind of like. Oh, I appreciate Mike Birbiglia being in the movie, but it was kind of a weird character. I didn't even think maybe we needed his character in the movie per se.
Yeah.
So I just thought that whole situation was very odd because the whole movie, it's kind of like, okay, we're learning about other people and we're, trying to be nicer and more kind. And then this happens and it's kind of like a complete 180. And like I said, in the book, that does happen as well. But the way that it's written is not as drastic as how it happened in the movie. So
Yes, perfect. Because my main thing, I had talked about changes from the book to the movie. I didn't like that change either, and I didn't like. I kind of mentioned this earlier, but I didn't like the social media journalist.
Mhm.
I get why we did that. I wasn't bothered that they changed the family from Iranian to Mexican. Like that actually made sense to me in America why we would do that. But I was kind of like, I rolled my eyes a little bit at the social media aspect. And I also agree with you. I love Mike Birbiglia, but I was like, I don't know that we needed this big standoff and all that stuff. So that fell a little flat for me as well. I'm in total agreement with you there.
Well, and like that scene started and then it was just over so quick. Like there was
Yeah.
I think that was my main problem with it is there was like no build up to it or anything. And then they're like, aha, we got you. And then it's done.
Yes.
So it just
Yeah.
seemed out of place with the rest of the movie. So another dislike for this movie is the trailer. The trailer for this movie it's bad. It's not good at all. They could have really they didn't highlight anything in the trailer that was maybe going to pull at you emotionally or any positives.
It's probably one of the worst
Yeah.
trailers I've ever seen. I left the theater and I was like, I want to find out who did the trailer because I thought this movie was going to suck with a capital S.
And it
because of the
doesn't.
trailer.
Yeah, the trailer is just really bad. So don't judge it off of the trailer. And then another dislike is this movie does demonstrate a lot of ways to complete suicide. There's a noose. There's sitting in a car while gasoline is pumping in. So like this asphyxiation from fumes. There's a gun. There's multiple
gun
things.
one.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Because the gun one, I can't say I've thought of doing that. But when he started it, I was like, I don't even know how he's going to do this. And I was like, oh, well, he's going to show me step by step here how I can do this. And it's not funny. I'm sorry. I'm laughing at the way I presented that information. But yeah, there is, I don't know how necessary it was to show us step by step how to complete suicide 3 to 4 different ways. I think people know that information, and sure, you can find it on social media. I mean, like, you can find it on the internet, which is unfortunate, but I am disturbed. It was my least favorite thing in the film by far, by how much they showed and to what detail they showed. It's important to know he was planning to kill himself, and why, and that's the entire premise of the story, but you don't need to show how he tried to do it in great detail every time.
Yeah, that was a little excessive. And it does just kind of pop out of nowhere, but that's how I won't make that a dislike, because that's how it is in the book as well. You'll just be reading and then all of a sudden he will decide it's time for another attempt. So and then you read that for a chapter or two and then you move on to the next thing. So that's not a dislike, knowing how the book is, but I could see if I hadn't read the book and just been like, okay, we're just going along. Oh, and now he's going to try to kill himself again. Okay, this is a lot of emotions. So
that's a lot.
Well, I think that's all of our dislikes. So we'll move on to our scores now. I can't remember who's first this time.
I think it's me.
Okay, what are you going to give
everyone.
it?
Okay, everyone, it's a new year, and I'm trying to be just a little bit tougher. I'm still too nice, and I'm aware of that, but I'm going to go with 86. I thought this movie was really good. Normally, I think normal Katie would be like, let's go in the 90s. But I do think there were some issues with this movie. And although I loved it so much, it's my first movie I've rated on Letterboxd this year. Highly rated on Letterboxd. I loved it. I cried so much. It's going to stick with me. I'd watch it again and again. I do think that there was room for improvement. And it's probably not going to be like my favorite movie of the year. So I thought it was great. 86. Well done.
I am going to go just a little bit lower, but still in the 80s. I'm going to give it an 82 out of 100.
Oh, excellent.
So I also really enjoyed it. I think the biggest thing that we've kind of mentioned already is that it was a big surprise. I think we thought this movie was going to be in the 50s, 60s maybe, and it's much better than that. I thought it was
a waste of time.
Yeah. So
going to be a waste of time.
I thought it was going to waste 2 hours at the movie theater, and I walked out pleasantly surprised and really enjoyed myself with the movie. So yeah, so I would say definitely, I don't think this is one you necessarily have to go see in theaters. I think it still would view fine if you watched it at home or streaming when it comes to that. But if you want to this is a good, I think, time to release this too, because January normally doesn't have a lot of great movies come out, and there's not really any good dramas out right now. So I think this was a good time to do this.
Jared, I owed you an apology because I really wasn't sure about this movie, and Jared said, Katie, isn't this kind of like a Tom Hanks podcast? And I was like, oh yeah, that's a good point. And so we went, but it's because of Jared. And I loved the book so much. I mean, that book is one of my favorite books I've ever read. So, and Tom Hanks is one of my favorite people. So I'm really glad we saw it, but thanks for pushing us to go see it.
No problem. I feel like we had to, like you said, we had to review it because we talk about Tom Hanks so much. So you can follow the show on social media at Podcast Silver on Twitter and Instagram, and search the Silver Screen Podcast on Facebook. We also have our Letterboxd profiles in the show description, so you can find us on Letterboxd if you would like to follow us there. And on our next episode, it's our top 10 movies of 2022, favorite movies of last year, and Oscar nominations. So
oh yeah, they're coming.
Yes, they are. They might be out by the time you hear this, not sure, but we'll have a full recap of everything on our next episode in terms of who got nominated, who was snubbed, and then along with that, while we kind of the Oscars are kind of recapping the year in movies, we'll give you our top 10 favorite movies from 2022.
I love when we do this too, because Jared and I don't talk about it in advance. So you never know. In the words of Forrest Gump, you never know what you're going to get.
No, we just go in blind and we don't tell each other our lists and just get our natural reactions. So
very exciting.
So that'll be our next episode, top 10 movies of 2022 and Oscar nominations.
Until next time, we'd like to thank the Academy.